Hello, everyone. My guest today is Richard Jones, and he runs a company called the Wayin platform, which makes it easy for non-technical business users to create engaging, interactive marketing experiences that collect first-party data and improve marketing results at speed and scale. Richard, are you ready to take us to the top?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. So give us an example, maybe a customer using you guys so we understand what you do, and then tell us how you make money. Are you pure play SaaS or not?
Yeah, will do. So, firstly, we are a full pure play SaaS company, a multi-tenant SaaS platform. We have around 150 plus enterprise customers around the world. So this is people like P&G or Reckitt Benckiser, HP, IBM, Air New Zealand, etc. And essentially, our platform is designed for non-technical marketers to be able to create interactive experiences that actually collect data directly from consumers and that can be published to a variety of different channels. So, websites, Google double-click ads, Instagram social stories, wherever they want to engage with the consumer.
So, Richard, how are they collecting this? Is it cookie data? Are the users typing in their own data? Is it more like a Clearbit structure? What is it?
Yeah, so it's essentially true explicit data. People interacting with experience, filling out a form, providing marketing opt-ins, and this is an interesting trend phenomena that's going on in the industry around data. So, the readers will have been acutely aware of what's been going on around, this new age of privacy that we're moving into. So obviously you've had people like Mark Zuckerberg getting hauled in front of the Congress and the EU, Google, being in the spotlight in terms of how they use consumer data and the consents with which they have collected that data. There's a wave of regulatory changes that's going on from, the EU's GDPR to the Online Consumer Privacy Act in California, through to South Korea and all sorts of different particular political environments. Even down to the state of Georgia are now looking at implementing their own privacy regulations.
Yeah. So Richard, sorry, are these just to double down on the product real quick? So are these like contests that brands can launch to like capture information? What's it actually look like, the interface?
Yeah, so there's a whole variety of different mechanics which actually provide a value exchange for the consumer to give you their data and engage with you. So that could be things like, a straight competition or sweepstakes, and that provide a chance to win. It could be interactive experiences that are kind of allowing you to discover content, or unlock content or reveal content. We have a whole variety of different mechanics that provide people the reasons to give you their data. I'll give you a practical example just because I think it's useful. So one of our customers, Air New Zealand, was launching a bunch of different destinations in the US. And so they ran a campaign called What Makes You Say Yay to the USA. This experience lived in a number of different places. It lived on their website. It lived inside a Google double-click ad, so an interactive ad unit. And it was also embedded on the travel section of a media partner. When you actually interact with the experience, you're basically, it's showing you various different content of different experiences that you can have in the USA. So, museums, carnivals, nature, whatever it may be. And as a user, you're basically swiping or clicking on what from a number of different experiences are the most interesting things for you. And at the end of that flow, it's then saying, yeah, Richard Jones, your perfect destination in the US is New Orleans, based on how you've interacted with the experience. Would you like a chance for you and 3 friends to win tickets to New Orleans? Yes, you fill in your PII data, your marketing opt-ins. And then what happens next, I think, is quite interesting. So they collect that data. They had about 100,000 people that actually entered the experience. The data then
was that all paid, or did they email their customer list to drive traffic to it?
Well, it wasn't all paid because some of it was living on their own properties, so on their website. So some of it was paid in terms of pushing it up via Google double-click ads unit or embedding on a site. Some of it is collected from their own property, so natural traffic. Now, the data, so obviously only one person wins. The rest of the 100,000 folks, you've got rich profile information about what kind of traveler they are and what kind of things interest them. it triggered an automatic email that went out saying, right, you didn't win, but if you book tickets to your perfect destination, New Orleans, within the next month, here's a 5% discount code. And so that generated millions of dollars of revenue for them. They had a live 38.
Is this data, will this data all stay siloed in that customer that worked with you, or do you take that data and share it across other people that pay you for data?
No, so we have very, very clear belief that data must be kept within the brand. We don't own the data, we don't share the data. The data is owned completely by the brands and leveraged.
And give me a general sense of size here. So customers that are paying you, I don't want to go down every cohort, but on average, what's an enterprise customer paying you to use this software?
Yeah, so essentially, our average sort of foot in the door contract value is around $65,000, and then that can grow depending on the amount of markets, divisions, and brands that actually roll it out.
Yep.
And we collected last year over 500 million PII data records from these experiences across 152 enterprise customers, and we'll do well over 700 million this year. So the volume of data that's being collected is really growing, and I think there's probably a couple of reasons for that. One is, with this new age of privacy, marketers can't just buy third-party data and use it for targeting anymore because there's inherent legal risks with doing that. It's put the onus on marketers to have to go and connect directly to consumers and find out information such as preference information, characteristics, desires, and collect marketing opt-ins in order to be able to deliver, targeted, segmented messaging, personalized to the consumer. So everyone,
Richard, totally. Sorry, I don't mind. I want to refocus this on you. So I totally get the product. I think my audience will totally understand it. They 100% get it. They understand why you're growing. But I want to refocus this on you for a second. So 152 customers. You said, minimum contract value is called $65,000 coming in. So I mean that puts you north of $800,000 per month right now in revenue. Is that generally accurate?
Yes. Actually, quite a bit more than that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there a better range you can give us? Do you want to give any more specific than that, or is that fine?
10 million plus.
Oh, that's great. Very good. So let's put this on a timeline. So I want to kind of break down the growth story. When did you launch the company? What year?
Yeah, so we launched the company in 2011. We essentially started that. So the history of the company is I founded a company called Engage Sciences, which been rebranded as Wayin because we merged with a company that was created by Scott McNeely, who was the co-founder and CEO of Sun for many years. And essentially, we've taken the Engage Sciences technology, combined it with the robust experience of the Sun folks and Scott McNeely and his leadership and his connections, and actually taken and scaled this now into the US from its original humble beginnings in the UK.
Mm-hmm. And so help me understand how that happened. I mean, are you now like basically a hired CEO in this combined company, or do you actually have meaningful equity still?
Yeah, so I obviously as a founder of Engage Sciences, I had a meaningful equity in Engage Sciences. We then merged it with Wayin, so I have meaningful equity in Wayin. Okay,
and you're leading the company, right? The other guy is just basically a partner you merged with his company. He's not active though.
He is an active chairman, but I took over the role of CEO.
Operate from an operations perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And give me a general sense today, team size, and where's everybody based?
Yes, we have about 72 folks in the company. There's a pretty even spread between international and the US. Obviously, Engage Sciences was UK based. We've got a big footprint there, and so we do about 50% of our revenue in the US, 40% in Europe, and about 10% in Asia Pac.
Okay, very good. And talk to me about growth rate. So if you're at kind of north of 10 million in ARR today, or about $830,000 a month, where were you a year ago?
Yeah, so our revenue around the Wayin experience platform has grown about 62% in terms of product subscription revenue year over year.
That's great. So that means you would be doing about maybe 600-ish about a year ago per month.
Yes.
Where's most of that growth come from? New customers or expansion across the older cohort?
No, it's a mixture. It's definitely a mixture. We are pretty good, robust growth in terms of new business. We do focus on the Fortune 500 companies, so we're not driving an SME or a mid-tier strategy. It's really focused on the biggest and largest brands in the world. But there is pretty sizable revenue growth in the cohorts, because typically we'll be deployed into a brand in a country and then scale out from there.
So Richard, when you look at expansion revenue on a cohort from a year ago, so like year one ACV to year two ACV, are you typically doubling contract size, or is it 110%? What's the growth typically look like there?
Yeah, it's not quite doubling. On average, it's about 25% growth.
That's still pretty healthy on those accounts. That's good. And what's gross revenue churn annually?
So the gross revenue is about 11.5 million.
Sorry. Gross revenue churn per year. So if your expansion's 25%, I'm curious what you're losing from that cohort every year, so that we can get your net revenue retention.
Yeah. So I mean, it does. It's quite interesting when we actually do the analysis on churn. What we have found, which is what powers our business, is we had relatively high rates of churn in the smaller sized customers. So where we had veered into mid-tier SME territory, we had high rates of churn. When you actually look at customers in the larger cohort in terms of the size of the contract value and the size of the companies in that Fortune 500 bracket, we get extremely low rates.
How low annually?
Well, it's actually positive net churn. So we're actually growing those cohorts rather than actually losing them on a dollar basis.
By how much? Like 110% or 105% or what?
Yeah, it's about 25, so 125% in terms of that cohort.
Okay.
In number of customers, we have there is some churn in terms of the number of customers, because we've sort of refocused.
Yeah, but we don't care about that. We don't care about that because you have such a huge spread of ARPUs, right? If you churn small customer logos, it doesn't matter if net revenue retention is still above 100%. But hold on, you just told me that your expansion on a contract is typically 125% 25% year over year, and then you told me your net revenue retention was 125%. That would mean that your gross revenue churn is 0. Is that accurate?
Yeah. In the top cohort, it is pretty much 0. In the smaller customers, it has been higher.
Okay, got it. Fair enough. And then talk to me about growth. So when you are onboarding these new customers, let's say you go out and you close a deal for a new customer at your average price point there. 60, whatever it is. How much are you spending to acquire that customer typically?
Yeah, so we actually have relatively small marketing budget. We operate in a relatively lean way. So
are you bootstrapped?
In terms of the amount, yeah, it's not bootstrapped. We do have venture capital backing in USVP, but we do operate a relatively lean model. So we're spending around 2% of our revenue on marketing, which is a smaller segment than many other CEOs that I speak to.
Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, to land a new $75,000 first year kind of customer, what are you willing to spend to acquire that customer? 10 grand, 100 grand, 500? Like, what are you spending?
So I actually don't know exactly what the figure is for the 75K per customer.
How do you? All I'm trying to get at is, how do you measure payback period on new ARR driven? Is it 12 months, 6 months?
Right. Okay. Gotcha. So payback is just over a year.
Okay. Very good. That's pretty healthy. So what that tells me is you're totally comfortable from a cash perspective spending first year contract value to acquire the customer, because they'll stay with you longer.
Yes.
Got it. Correct. And you've raised what, $50 million to date?
Yes, we have. Yes.
And is that just that's in the company after the merger, or that's money pre-merger and post-merger?
So that is actually pre-merger. So Engage Sciences raised $4.2 million. Wayin had raised $50 million. Post merger, we haven't really raised. We've only raised. We did a small bridge round of about $2.5 million. So we're
was
not
that debt or equity?
That was debt.
Yeah, I was going to say, typically it's very common to see a bridge round be debt based. And is that just because you want to buy more time to get to the valuation you want so you can raise additional capital?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've come out with a strategic relationship with Adobe, which was put in place a couple of weeks ago. So I was out at Salt Lake City
Congrats.
with the team. Yeah, no, it's really really good. So you know, the onus on collecting this data in a scalable way has really changed with the market conditions. And folks like Adobe are very forward thinking, and they have comprehensive, robust plans in terms of what position they want to play in the ecosystem around the controlling of this data in these centralized profiles. And technologies like Wayin are able to feed that strategy. And so we want more time for things like the Adobe relationship to really play out.
Very good. Richard, we're out of time. Let's wrap up very quickly with the famous five. Number one, what's your favorite business book?
That's a good. I've got so many. That is good. A good question. Come back to me. I'll come to that in a minute.
Number two, is there a CEO you're following or studying right now?
Yes, there is. It won't be much of a surprise, but it's Scott McNealy, my chairman. He is my mentor, and I work very closely with him.
Number three, what's your favorite online tool for building the business besides your own?
I like outreach from personalized, being able to scale communications across an SDR team.
Great. Number four, how many hours of sleep do you get every night?
About 6.5.
That's pretty good. And what's your situation? Married, single, kids?
Married with one child, and had the child 3 months after setting up the company as a startup. Geez. So it is possible.
And how old are you, Richard?
44.
44. Last question. What do you wish your 20-year-old self knew?
To start earlier on the road of being an entrepreneur, because you have to fail to learn. You have to make mistakes to really work out what's going on. And the earlier you start making those mistakes, the more you're going to learn. So I would have started at least 15 years earlier as an entrepreneur.
Guys, there you have it. Start earlier. Coming from Richard, founded in 2011, Wayin, a better way for brands, big brands, to connect customer data in a fun, engaging way. 152 customers doing about 11 million or 11.5 million bucks in terms of run rate right now. That's up 62% year over year. Each customer paying, call it 65, 70 grand per year in first year contract value, expanding that by 25% year over year. So healthy expansion of 125% net revenue retention each year. Willing to spend up to the first month of contract value on acquisition of the customer. Team of 72 people based in many different remote locations. Richard, thank you for taking us to the top.
Thank you, Nathan.